It's Bonnie again with Timeless Themes, stories from the Hebrew and Christian Bible. Today is our last story from the Hebrews, and it's pretty exciting. Fiery furnaces and roaring lions. Before we start, the theme is miracles. Now, I'm going to ask you, what do you think a miracle is? I went to a dictionary and looked it up and tried to put it into words you could understand. And it says it was an amazing beneficial. And then I thought, oh, you might not know what beneficial. That means it's good. It's an amazing event, a good event that seems to go against all the laws of nature. Now I'll give you an example. And this is true. A tornado went through a town, and a baby was asleep in a house in a cradle, and it took the whole house down, and the baby was found in the cradle hanging in a tree, unharmed. Now, it seems like if the tornado took the house, the baby would have been killed and everything in it. So that's a modern day miracle. But there were lots of these miracles that were talked about among the Hebrews. And of course, they gave all the credit to their God that we've been talking about. But now I want to tell you a little bit of actual history that the Babylonians, you know how it took the Hebrews a long time to find their land, the promised land, and Moses led them out of slavery down in Egypt where they were, and to this promised land. But for years, people have been fighting over this territory, and it evidently was a good land. It was near the sea, and they had transportation, and it must have been good for farming. But now the Babylonians had started this huge empire, and they went around fighting all these little countries and cities around them, and got more and more and more into their kingdom. So the Babylonians ruled all this area here. When they got to Judea, where the Hebrews were, they took them captives. And here was another exodus. They took them, as you see the pink line here, all the way back to Babylonia. And that's where our story today starts. So let me get over to the flannel board here and introduce you to King Nebuchadnezzar. And he is telling his subjects that he wants to see some of the captives that he brought in. He said, bring me the smartest ones, the best leaders that you can find. And so they went out and they looked among the captives, and they found Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they said, these are the best ones that we found. And the king said, well, I am going to educate you. He said, I'm going to send you to their version of what a college would be today and teach you literature and philosophy, and I'm going to teach you our language, and you will learn all this. Well, they were pretty eager to do this, and so they did. Now, time goes by. The king likes them a lot, and they're pretty wise. And one night, the king had this dream. You know, we've talked about dreams before and all the interpretations they put. And he dreamed this big idol, I guess, with a golden head and looks sort of like the Incredible Hulk with a Egyptian beard, doesn't it? but he didn't know what it meant, and he really wanted to know what it meant. So he called his people and he said, I've had this dream, and I want you to tell me what it is and tell me what it means. He didn't even tell them what the dream was. He just told them that he wanted them to tell him. Well, they couldn't tell him. Those were his wise men. So they went and they got Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And he told Daniel about this dream. Well, Daniel had prayed to his God about it, and God had given him a vision and given him the same dream. And he told him what this meant. And he told him, and so the king was very happy with him. And he said, oh, I'm going to make you guys rulers over a lot of this area. And he did. And he made Daniel a very high up leader, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were also leaders. And things went on like that for a while. Let's have a change of scene here now. This is kind of the desert where they lived. And one day the king got this idea. He was getting pretty kind of proud of himself. And he said, I'm going to build this huge golden statue. And it'll be 90 feet tall. That's almost as tall as a football stadium is. And 9 feet wide. And so he did. And oh, he was so pleased with it. And he said, bring all the leaders from all of my kingdom. So in they came, all the judges and the people, all the leaders. They're all coming in to see this wonderful golden statue that the people have made, or that the king had made. And he said, now, you're going to hear some music. And when you hear this music, I want you all to bow down to the statue. And let's get Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego there, because they were leaders and they came too. Okay, so everybody's here looking at this wonderful golden idol. That's so fantastic. And so when you hear the fanfare, bow down. Okay, we're waiting. So they began to bow down. Everybody bowed down to the golden statue, except Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And the king said, why, you didn't bow down? They said, no, we don't bow down to idols. We only pray to our God. And he said, well, then I'll have to throw you into the fiery furnace, because that's what I said, if you didn't bow down. So he had his men get them and tie them up and throw them into the furnace. Oh my goodness, look at this. And it was so hot that the people who were throwing them in died immediately. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not. There was not a hair on their arm singed. And they came out, and the king said, the God of the Hebrews has kept them safe, so everybody should worship the God of the Hebrews. And things went on like that for a while. And things were pretty happy. And they were ruling and they were worshiping their God like they wanted to. have a new king. Nebuchadnezzar is off, and Darius is on. So we'll just make the same one be Darius. And Darius likes Daniel, and he likes Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He thinks they're really wise and good people. And he said, but his people were jealous. They wanted to be like Daniel. They wanted to be the favorite ones. And they said, "Oh, you are so wonderful, King Darius. We want to pass a law that everybody should worship you. And if they don't worship you, then they should be thrown into the den of lions." Well, he thought that was okay. I mean, my gosh, he was going to have them worship him. Okay. So he signed it into law. Well, that's the kind of hats they wore back in the Babylonian time. So, guess who didn't? Daniel. Daniel kept worshiping his God and praying to his God. And so they brought him to the king and said, "You have to cast him into the den of lions." And Darius said, "Oh, well." No, you have to. You signed it into law. He says, "Well, okay, Daniel, I'm sorry, but it is a law, and you're refusing to do it." So watch how quickly the royal palace becomes the dungeon. So poor Daniel. Here it is. We put bars up at the windows, and we throw in some lions, and now you'd think he might be eaten up, but God sent an angel to him and shut the mouths of the lions so they couldn't eat Daniel up. And the king came in and said, "Oh, Daniel, nothing happened to you. Your God must be better." And he said, "All those people who tried to trick you, we're going to throw them in instead." So Daniel comes out, and those men go in, and this time the lions did not keep their mouths shut. Ta-da! And that's the story of Daniel in the lion's den. I have a song about it. Let's go back to the computer. Let's see where the words are. And I'll sing the first verse, and then you'll see it's just repeated 3 times. Then we'll go back and do it again. Okay. Wonder where is good old Daniel? Wonder where is good old Daniel? Wonder where is good old Daniel? Way over in the promised land. Okay, now you sing it with us, and then we'll go right on into the next verse. And then there's more about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I always like to say them when I was young. Wonder where is good old Daniel? Wonder where is good old Daniel? Wonder where is good old Daniel? Way over in the promised land. He was cast in the den of lions. He was cast in the den of lions. He was cast Meshach, Abednego? Where are Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego? Where are Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego? Way over in the promised land. They were cast in the fiery furnace. They were cast in the fiery furnace. They were cast in the fiery furnace. Way over in the promised land. All were saved from Nebuchadnezzar. All were saved from Nebuchadnezzar. All were saved from Nebuchadnezzar. Way over in the promised land. Now, that was our last story about the Hebrews, but I would be remiss if I did not tell you a modern update of this. For years, thousands of years, they fought over this land because I guess it was good land. They were right on the sea. They had transportation. They were right next to Egypt, who was a very advanced, civilized country. And this was Palestine. And then in 1948, they had a civil war there with the Hebrews, or now they were known as Jews, and the Arabs, are the Palestinians, and that fighting over this land, because you can see this dotted land right here. It seems to be right in the middle. This is the West Bank, this is the Gaza Strip, and they belong to Palestine, but Israel wants them because, look, it's right in the middle of their land. So they had a war, and they reestablished the country of Israel, which is still there today. And I hate to tell you, but they're still fighting. The Middle East, we often call this, and they're still fighting over this land. And the Palestinians say it's theirs, and the Israelis say it's theirs, and both of them want it. So that's sad that they're still fighting over that land. And I don't know how it'll come out. You'll have to watch the news to see. But neither of them, it's a sacred city. Jerusalem is a sacred city for the Christians, the Jews, and the Muslims. They all have a tie to that city, and they all want it. But I guess people don't like to share very much either. Next week, we will start on the Christianity stories. And you remember, at Christmas time, we acted out the story of Jesus' birth. It was called Christmas in the Stable. But we didn't get any further than the shepherds and everybody coming there. And now we're going to find out what happened after that. So, see you next week. Bye.